Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Saturday, February the 9th, and welcome to our video commentary. Well, today we're going to go back in history to something that happened on this day, this evening of February the 9th, 1964, or 55 years ago today. Hard to believe that 55 years have gone by already. But it was on this evening that the Beatles made their first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. And of course, it was a smash. Something like 70%, I've read that 70% of the televisions in the country were watching the Ed Sullivan Show. I mean, it was a smash. It was something that had not been seen, the kind of reaction that had not been seen since Elvis, or before that, Frank Sinatra, and so on. And the story of the Beatles and Ed Sullivan is a very interesting story because there are a couple of versions that I've read as to how Ed Sullivan came to know of the Beatles. One version says that Ed Sullivan was in London going out to dinner one Sunday night with his wife. They were going out to dinner and then to a play, and they got caught in a traffic jam. And then Ed noticed all these young girls, and all the commotion, all the screaming. So he asked the taxi driver, what's going on, and he explained that it was the Beatles. And Ed Sullivan, obviously always thinking in show business terms, I think allegedly turned to his wife and said, if these girls in England scream like this for the Beatles, I bet they'll do the same thing in America. That's one version of the story. Another one that I've also heard is that Ed Sullivan heard of the Beatles when he was at the airport in London departing for the United States, that he noticed again a bunch of girls who were rushing to the airport to welcome the Beatles, who were coming back, I think, from a trip to a European city or whatever. And again, the same thing. He noticed all the commotion, all the excitement, and again, turned to his wife and said, what is this? And said to his wife, if they scream like this in London, they're going to scream like this in America. So when he went back to the United States after these trips, he apparently told his people to figure out how we could bring the Beatles to the United States. Literally, it's amazing. It's really amazing. But even as late as Christmas 1963, or 6 weeks before they debuted it on his show, none of the Beatles records were getting airplay in the United States. It's really amazing when you think about it. But none of their songs in England in 1963 were even heard on the radio in the United States that year. And of course, all of that changed when Capitol Records released I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then Ed Sullivan brought them to the United States. And it was an amazing appearance. They sang 6 songs that night. There were 2 segments, 3 in the first and then 3 in the second segment. The very first song that they sang was All My Loving, and the last one was I Want to Hold Your Hand. In between, they did She Loves You, they did a few others, I Saw Her Standing There, and a few others as well. But it was a clearly historic performance on this night in 1964. Now, one final note, I didn't see it. I was not living in the United States at the time, and that kind of show was not shown in Cuba. And also the Castro dictatorship was not very fond of the Beatles anyway. So, I didn't know anything about it until we came to the United States in September 1964. And then, I was just like everybody else, I got caught up in the story. But the Beatles, 1964, 55 years ago today, I don't know this for sure, but I have read that the percentage of television sets that were watching the Beatles that night is still, in terms of percentage, the highest audience ever. Obviously not in numbers, because that was 55 years ago. But in terms of percentage, that it was the highest ever and continues to be the highest ever for a television show. Not sure about that. You may want to double check it, but I've heard that point. Well, thank you for watching. We have all of these on YouTube, on Tweet, as well as on my blog. And if today is your birthday, happy birthday. Bye-bye, everybody.